Hey there. My latest Salamanders captain had a hammer, but it was a separate hammer, so there were no hands on the handle. Almost all the weapons that you get from the kits, the miniature kits, are meant to be held, but sometimes you actually like to have no hands, or maybe you would like to switch out the hand, or this one is two-handed and maybe you want to have it single-handed instead. This was actually a similar axe to this one, but where it has two hands over here, it only has one hand over here, and this is actually not a Space Marine hand. So I got some questions about that. How do you remove the hands from the handle? And I thought maybe I could just show you. What you're going to have to do is a couple of things. First, of course, you need the weapon, either a hammer or an axe or a sword, or it doesn't really matter, but the weapon that you want to have. And you are going to cut that off like as high as possible. There we go. And then the other part that we need is the bottom. And depending on whether I want the weapon still to be held or not, I can also cut out the hand. And now we need to find something that can stand in for the handle. One way of doing it is just rummaging through your bits box and seeing if you have anything that has a handle which is long enough for what you want and which you don't mind using from this one. So for this hammer, you could use the bottom part, and then you can also replace the bottom that I have here. Just cut it off here. Or maybe if I have this Terminator staff, I could use this part to make it a very short hammer. But also you can look at some very different parts. So this is a Gauss weapon from the Necrons, which might also be interesting to use. Or if you simply do not have anything to use, there's these polystyrene rods that you can buy from Evergreen in all kinds of thicknesses and shapes. So these could be very useful. But something else that you could also use is what I showed in a different video, which are these tentacables, a green stuff wire with texture over a metal wire. So now it has a metal core, and I can use this to attach it to both ends of the hammer. So that might be an interesting one too. The only thing is that it's quite flexible, so you need to make sure that it's not going to stick out too much, because otherwise it's gonna bend quite easily. Or you need to use a thicker gauge wire in there. But for now, I'll just show this one. So measure out the size that you would like to use roughly and cut that off as well. So now I have all the parts that I need, and I could arrange them in the way that I like. So if I want to have a weapon without any hands on it, I could just get them together like that. But if I wanted to have one with a hand, I could glue it in the place where I wanted it to be. Or I could like switch it around a bit. Or I could have a different hand somewhere else. Now I could just glue all these together with glue. But it's going to be a very small surface between all the parts. So this is going to snap very easily. So what you're going to do now, you're going to drill a pin in each of these parts. But for the handles it's going to be a bit harder. So take your time and try to keep the drill in the center and not get it pointing like this, because you're going to shoot through the plastic quite easily. So just drill through and take your time. Now, especially for the smaller parts, I found that it's actually best if you go all the way through, because then you can put a single wire through it entirely and then glue it at all ends, and then it's even less prone to snap. It's easiest to do that, especially for these barrels, if you drill first on one end until like halfway, and turn it around and drill into the other end, and then you meet somewhere in the center. Because the longer you have to drill through, the bigger the chances are that you're going to go into the sides at a certain point. Yeah, so it definitely goes for the hands, because if you would drill a pin on one end and on the other end, those pins would be very small. And they won't grip too much, but if you drill through it, it's a single pin that goes both ways. Okay, so then we're going to add the pin. So now if I want to make like a complete handle, I could just put the separate parts like that and glue these all into place. But the goal for this one was to have a weapon without a handle. Now if you didn't drill the holes entirely at the center, what you usually can do is if you put it on, you can rotate it a bit and you can see where it fits the best. So here it's a slightly off center, but if I turn it around, it becomes on center, and now I have a clean fit. Yeah, and there you have it. Now we have a separate hammer with no hands on it. You can use this to decorate a battlefield or hang it on the back of a miniature. I don't know, go wild. There's some interesting fun to be had here. Yeah, so that's it. Hope you learned something, and if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. Goodbye.